Hello and welcome to episode 6, season 3 of the Experience Lounge podcast. Today we've got a really exciting episode where we're joined by Bovim of Livingroom Analytics, and we're going to be talking a lot about workplace analytics and how you can use that to measure your employee experience. But before we get into the topic, Sasha, how have you been?
I am doing good. It is Monday evening now for me, which is great. So I have survived Monday, had a pretty chilled, lazy weekend, which was great, doing my bit for society to reduce the transmission risk, which, I'm just an everyday hero, I don't want thanks or praise, but, that justifies my lazy weekend doing not a lot, but watching a lot of trash TV, which was great. That's about it, really. What about you, Laura?
I had a lovely weekend with family. So my niece was visiting and my little boy absolutely loves his cousin. So that was nice, sort of watching them play together. We went to the beach, which obviously is not the same as beaches in Singapore in terms of the weather. But it was actually a really lovely weekend. So bright and sunny. So one of those kind of crisp winter weekends. So very nice overall. And it was just nice to sort of to catch up and spend time with family, really. So it was enjoyable and feel nice and rested today on a Monday morning, which is now
very nice.
Very typical of me to talk about the weather, but it's now drizzly and rainy, so it's very short-lived, as it always is.
Of course it is. But that sounds very wholesome. Very wholesome indeed.
Yes, it was good. So onto the topic today then. The episode that we've got is around measuring employee experience with Bovim, who is the co-founder and CEO of Livingroom Analytics. Based on his PhD and extensive research within organisation behaviour and social psychology, he's developed the Bovim Model, which is a unique model for measuring and improving employee experience. And leveraging the model, Livingroom Analytics delivers a data-driven and innovative EX management platform that helps companies transform their employee experiences and foster a culture of belonging where employees feel included, inspired, and involved. Besides heading up Livingroom Analytics, teaches leadership and organisation behaviour at the Copenhagen Business School. In the past, he has served as a visiting scholar at the Fisher College of Business at the Ohio State University, and he's worked as a management consultant for 15 plus years, advising large companies in the Nordics. So, really great episode, wasn't it, Sasha? We really enjoyed it. So let's get into it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Experience Lounge podcast. I am so excited. Today, Laura and I are joined by the amazing Bovim, and we are going to be talking about everything and anything employee experience measurement. So we're super excited to have him on the podcast. I'm not going to go into a massive intro. I want him to tell us everything we need to know about him. So over to you. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell us a bit about you, a little bit about Livingroom Analytics, and then we'll go from there.
Well, first, thank you for having me. So that's an honor being at your show and like all this great episodes you have on EX. That's really amazing what you're doing there. So I want to just give a quick introduction of myself. I'm actually born in Norway, but now I'm living here with my family in Denmark, and I have kind of like two tracks in my professional life. So the first thing is I was working as a management consulting for around like 15, 18 years, working with a lot of the biggest Nordic companies in the Nordics, and like Statoil, Equinor is like a Norwegian big company, and others. So that was interesting. But I've also been doing a lot of research. So started long back and did my PhD and studied organizational behavior. Also, actually, a combination of organizational behavior and social psychology. And then I've been interning or visiting scholar in the Fisher School of Business at Ohio State University for a couple of years. Teaching at the Copenhagen Business School for, I think, 12 years now. So that was very quickly about my professional things. And beside that, I have my Danish family, a kid on 3 years old, another on 8 years old, and then the oldest daughter, 11 years old. So I love my family and staying with them. But also, when I have time, I'm very interested in all kinds of science, especially like space science. So I love space science, and I definitely, love everything new that's happening there, and also skiing. So
Wow.
Denmark is very flat and it's not as cold as Norway. So we actually we don't have so much snow here. But when I get to go to Norway to do cross country skiing, downhill skiing, that's a passion for sure.
Wow. Awesome. So the family stuff, that's your full-time job, right? That's the
always
full-time.
On. This is the part-time thing, right? So
Exactly. Absolutely. Well, incredibly impressive background, and love the passion for science. And that does not surprise me at all, given your background and your research focus as well. So no surprises here. Now, you've alluded to your history and your experience in the academia space. So why don't you tell us, where did your passion for employee experience begin? Like, how did that lead you to where you are today with Livingroom Analytics?
Well, I think I've always been interested in people and communities. So actually, it was back in 2000 when I started my bachelor thesis, where I got a chance to work with a insurance company, and they asked me to look at identity. There was like a set of questions they wanted to explore. So then I actually got into that, like trying to explore employees' identity, and especially in my PhD from 2003 and forward. I didn't know I was studying employee experience, but actually that was what we're doing. So I did a lot of qualitative studies of employees. I did like 160 interviews. Like it took me, forever, 7 years. But I was out on the old oil platform in Norway and studying drillers, for example, on the drilling floor. And they were standing out there in all kinds of weather. It was dangerous work. It could fall things from the drilling tower, and trying to make sense of what they were doing. So that was very interesting, studying like different types of works, like the drillers and the drilling towers. I was up in the helicopter interviewing them, participating actually, and then like researchers, some of the smartest people in Norway. That was also part of the study, and engineers. So very different types of work and how they actually form their identity around the work itself, like what they were doing. That's really important. The thing they wear and so on, but also connected to their unit, like the small group of people that they work together with. So that was actually, I didn't know it, but I was studying employee perspective, employee experience. And I thought, like, all this research, I've wrapped it up. I have like 500, 400 pages, like book where did that. That's like an old way of doing a PhD. And then I came to Denmark, and I thought like I could inspire a lot of companies with this research and tell them, how can you create employee experience, like belonging identity for employees. And I traveling around with Ernst & Young for a couple of years, and every company, big company, said, wow, this is great, we really want to invest in this thing. But when it comes to like money and time, I found out that's another story, right? So actually, that was the leading to starting Livingroom Analytics, because I actually understood that if you really want to have companies working with this, first, like you need to work with HR, but like they're coming to the top in the organization now, and that's everything goes through them. And second, you need like a software, a tool, HR like a tool that then they can implement. So actually that was what we were doing, trying to like put all this research and experience into like a tool. It doesn't do everything. You had to supply with things like your company is doing, but I think it's that was the idea, putting research into a tool that can actually identify all these challenges and come up with some actions. So that was kind of like the long journey for me into employee experience.
Oh, wow. I don't think I'm ever going to complain about conducting lots of employee interviews ever again. That sounds like
it's extensive, right?
And if someone told me to go on site with drillers, I think I'd be like, do you know what? It's a no from me. But I do know a guy. I know a guy that would do it for you.
Right.
Anyway, Laura, over to you.
That's cool. So you alluded a little bit in terms of how living room analytics sort of came to be, but for our
Right.
EX leaders listening, can you tell us a little bit more about living room analytics? What kind of insights can we expect? And we'd love to hear about the heat map as well. That would be great.
Sure. Well, thanks for the question. It's yeah. I mean, I think it's continuing on what I just talked about. So when I started Living Room Analytics, we actually wanted to do two things. So the first is to create the best technology, the modern technology available. Like I think Einstein said once, you can't solve today's problems with yesterday's solutions. You need kind of like new, like an updated technology that integrates with the HR system. It's not like just one model. You can actually it's very flexible technology that can create whatever dashboard you want. You can measure whatever you want. So that's the first thing. The second thing we wanted to do is actually create a tool that actually makes a real difference out there. Because I saw there are so many tools out there, but employees are still striving. They're still not feeling heard, right? So we wanted to create the tool that has much deeper insights than what is available so far. So that was actually what led me up to, and actually just one statistics that we found, that only 27% says that HR tech is actually changing behavior. So when you talk to the CEOs on the top level, they will say, we have this tool, engagement tool is great. But actually employees say that is only 27% that feel it's changing. So then I actually started with creating a big model, employee experience, and we call it the Bowie Model. Basically, summarizing all of research, everything is 1,700 factors that goes into creating a great employee experience. So everything from how you sit in your chair, so what's the lightning? It's communications between departments. Your manager, your CEO, is sexual harassment, violence, is feeling of appreciation, and much more. So that's like that. I think that's great because we have this understanding of what is the good experience for an employee, right? So this model, and we actually do it very visual. So we have it in a radial heat map, so you can actually dig down and zoom down to these levels. So that's the one thing, and it's basically based on three things. So in the very top level, I'm not going to talk about all the 1700 things, but top level, just three things. Three things summarizing research, saying what do you need to create a great employee experience. First thing is that people feel included. So no matter where you come from, what background you have, diversity, you say good morning to each other in the morning. You feel like welcoming. So a company needs to create this welcoming culture. Extremely important, and not as simple as it sometimes people think it is. The second thing is inspired. So people are inspired by more than earning money, especially millennials today. They say, I want to create a real difference to society, right? I want to contribute to sustainability, to being green, to society, to peace, democracy, whatever. So that's the second thing that companies need to focus on. The third thing is involved, so that employees really feel involved in tasks and get trust and autonomy. And Novo Nordisk, a Danish company, big company, health company, medical company, they're really good at creating that trust with their employees. So we have a number of case stories here. So that's the Bowie Model. It drills down from those three top values to very detailed things. And then we combine that what we call the drill down surveys. So you think about normally for the last 100 years, the way we have done surveys is exactly the same. We have 20 or 60 questions, if it's really boring, that we ask employees about everything from the hair to their toes, right? Think about going to the doctor And he starts asking you, like, how's your feet today? Sorry, I'm like, it hurts up here, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so boring. That's the number one problem. And when engagement surveys came back in 2020 and 15, it's just got more boring because you get questions every week now, not only like once a year, but it's the same questions. So what we actually could do with this Bowie Model, we could actually make like a drill down survey that says, okay, you're not, so it's more like a qualitative like interview. So me sitting down with, like we just talked with a company with 100,000 employees, right? You can't do that with qualitative interviews, but you can actually use the survey and say, okay, so basically, are you feeling inspired today? And if he's saying no, well, what's the reasons? What is it? Growth? Is it growth possibilities? Is it leadership, and so on? Mm-hmm. And then we drill down and find out the real problem is that he lacks career opportunities, right? So that's like the beauty of this thing, combining the model. Without that, we couldn't do it. And the drill down service. So within 5 minutes, we don't need to do this 7 years PhD. We actually know what is the great things for the employee, but also what is his challenge or her challenges at work. So basically, what the company can expect from Livingroom Analytics is like getting this like very like quick, not bothering the employee, but depth or in-depth understanding of what is the challenges. So that's the baseline, and on top of that, of course, we can study like employee journeys from onboarding to recruiting and so on, and we have like a lot of other data you can add. But the baseline is this like in-depth intelligence survey that actually is 18 times deeper than any other tool we know of.
That sounds fascinating. And I also think, Laura, we talk about this quite a lot on the podcast, just in terms of employee experience design. So often we use the survey as a diagnostic tool, and then we start to drill into trends within that mammoth survey that you say it really is from kind of head to toe. And then we pause and then go out and look at the specific areas. And I think what you're talking about, and with Livingroom Analytics, is kind of, it's speeding that process up and getting straight to the issue rather than kind of going away, looking at it, and then having to do sub-surveys, and designing those surveys potentially based on the initial research, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. So it's, so you can see it's speeding up the data gathering process, which is like, can take a long time, and can definitely be combined with qualitative interviews and understanding. That's always like a good thing, but it's definitely helping companies collect all this data in a manner that doesn't like bother the employee too much.
Yeah, I love what you were saying as well around the drill down options. Like, I think that would be really valuable to organizations alongside the heat map that you were talking about. And like you say, Sasha, it's kind of a different way, a little bit of thinking about how you survey, maybe to even what we've talked about in the past. So I guess building a little bit on that, what would you see as some of the common mistakes that organizations make when they approach EX measurement and analytics?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the one of the first thing that hits me is that really understanding the importance of data. So when we're talking to companies, they say, oh, we have this like employee engagement survey. We have like 10 questions. We have 15 questions once a year.
Yeah,
great. Like if I like went to my wife and said like, I have 15 questions for you, New Year, right? Eve, and I said like, I have 15 questions, 1 to 5. Like, how's the last year been, right? Do you think that she really feel like understood and really like what's going on between that year? I mean, if that's listening to employees,
I doubt
like,
it.
no, we understand you, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. So I think that first thing is really that they really want to listen, of course. That's the very first thing. And then understanding that they need more data, and data is valuable. It's not that, like, I heard like one guy, like that was like 5 years ago, went to a big company in Denmark. They had 15,000 people, and the top global HR manager, he said, like, we talked about included, inspired, involved. He said, like, well, I think like my employees feel very included because I talked with one guy in the elevator the other day, and he said I feel very welcome when I come to the company, right? So, like, really understanding the importance of data, and that you need more data. You always need more data, as long as you're not bothering employees or monitoring them in the wrong way, and it's private and so on. So it's a purpose is good. That's the first thing. And the second thing I think can come up with, it's similar, but not really understanding employee experience. So what is employee experience all about? I think they can maybe wrap it into another tool they have. They can use the same methods. Mm-hmm. So basically understanding that employee experience has to do with a holistic, understanding the employees in a holistic manner. So really understanding the perspective, taking that perspective, and all these like methods in design thinking. So really grasping that. I mean, if you just jump into, we'll create a great employee experience, and we have this small mobile app we just implemented. Oh, great, now we got it, right? It's much more to it. So I think before jumping into this, take the time to really understand what is this concept all about. So we're not ending up with like actually employee engagement, which kind of ended up a little bit. This is like a nice to have tool, and there is like for branding they use it, not really for understanding employee experience. So I think that's the two first things. And the third thing might be focusing only on IT, right? So it's like a big focus out there is, of course, digitalization. And that's important, very important with Microsoft Teams, we're working remotely and so on. So when talking to companies, they say, well, we are creating a great consumer experience with this IT tool, right? We have Microsoft Teams. Well, great, right? That's a good first step, but it's what I called like small e. The big E is actually taking the whole experience, understanding the whole experience, right? It can, like, actually what we experienced when COVID-19 hit, that we had one particular company we run a survey in, and they had big problems with conflicts. That was before they started working on Teams remotely. But, the conflicts didn't go away. They're still very much present there in COVID-19. So the deeper issues that you really, it's not just like a brush up your IT tools. That won't do it. It's part of it, but it's not the whole thing. And finally, I will say, like some of the biggest companies we have working with have actually taken customer experience managers and put them in employee experience roles, right? That's like good thinking, because they know all this design thinking, they know the journeys, they know how to work with data and so on. So I think that's great, but they're lacking a little bit understanding of what the employee experience is all about, because it's very different from customer experience. Come into a shop, you buy something, go out, you don't feel the same type of belonging and connectedness with the company community. So I think combining that consumer experience things with HR, I mean, that's really important. It's a little bit difficult because HR are not so open to innovations and so on. So they need to be more agile, but that combination would be great.
I love
that. Yeah,
I love what you said around the difference between CX and EX, or that customer experience concept, because you're right. The customer experience is almost more transactional in a way than the employee experience being far more emotive. And you've also talked to the complexity of the experience ecosystem for employees. It's made up of everything. And I think I hear you loud and clear, and I was cheering for you, obviously without my animated cheer, because you're talking about the focus on IT. I see a lot of this as a focus on HR service. So when I talk to businesses about employee experience, we get into a conversation about our HR service delivery platform. And I'm having to say, it is so much more than that. Like getting service is one element, and is it frictionless and are we enabling our people is one facet of the employee experience, right? Would you agree, Raw?
Sure, definitely. So it's the whole spectrum, it's the holistic thinking. So that's for sure. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Laura, anything from you?
No, I was going to say the bit where you were sort of talking end to end. I think, in my experience, that's sort of where the education piece is. That I think often you'll hear organizations talk about employee experience, particularly in a context, like you say, of HR processes or things that like HR would traditionally have accountability for. But I think the real sweet spot is you being able to think more holistically across whether it's property, technology, HR, anyone that delivers experience into the business. It's that sort of end-to-end piece. But I think that sometimes gets lost in discussions around employee experience.
Right, and it's like bringing facilities in, bringing all those like different IT and HR, and kind of connecting that. That's often the issue and the problem. And sometimes they have the different service. So like facilities have like a huge company doing service on facilities. HR has their like engagement survey. IT has their IT experience survey, and it's going to be a lot of surveys. So I think that's also why we need this holistic thinking, bringing things together. I mean, for the employee perspective or understanding, they don't want like answering 50 surveys. They want like one little survey, and then we can like touch upon other data, right? And we can send the tasks out to facilities in different places, but you should think about the employee also when you do measuring, right?
Yeah,
definitely
agree. And I think that's the piece too about trying to. So if we were sort of thinking, what could EX practitioners take away from this? I think it's also even something really simple as if you are surveying colleagues across different departments, that actually you try and, as we were talking about, try and align that survey and sort of those measures and those questions, because that would be a really easy kind of tangible quick win, I think, as well, if people are sort of thinking, what are some things I can take away?
Definitely. Yeah.
That's great.
And so that leads me on nicely. That was a great segue, Laura. Brilliant. And apologies, by the way, if you could hear my tiny yappy dog just in the background.
A little bit.
Background. He was so excited about what you were saying. Yeah,
exactly.
He was just like, yes, Raw.
Right.
So just kind of looking at advice for EX practitioners, right? And so we have a lot of people that are relatively new to employee experience listening to the podcast. And so in your opinion, what are the top 3 to 5 measures or indicators of employee experience for newbies to employee experience measurement?
Well, you're giving me a little bit hard time there because it's like, I think that one of the challenges that we just talked about is this holistic thinking. So it's like that's hard to do with 3 things, but I will say that if you want to start a place, don't start with like measuring emails and calendar data, right? Behavioral data, or you need to create like a baseline. So a baseline for employee experience, and I think like so services, of course, surveys have a lot of problems, but are still the best tool we have for getting into the heads of employees. Well, besides qualitative like interviews, though, that's it better. But besides that, I would say like a small survey measuring first, of course, the total overall employee experience. That's important, but also getting to some of the drivers. So it'd be like if you have 5, then it's like 4 drivers and 1 overall question. But it's definitely the belonging is very important. So we did some AI. We have an MIT student actually working for us and doing some MI and AI, and what he actually found out from all our data from all our customers is that sense of belonging is the number one important factor for employee experience. It's also purpose. That was also very high. So purpose, belonging, and task satisfaction is also really important. So that will be like the top drivers of employee experience if you just want to shut at those things. So that will be the first thing, creating that like baseline. And then, of course, then I will like tap into the journeys and start working with onboarding journey, for example. Maybe just one journey at the start, working with onboarding, and maybe having a small pulse survey there, running every second week or something like that, digging into to that. Of course, that will be the start, and then you can add like a lot of other data. You can add the Bovim survey and other things. Well, yeah.
Awesome. So nice little plug at the end there. I really liked that. So glad we got that in. So certainly have a look at Livingroom Analytics. I think that's great. And lots of, I actually think this entire episode has been full of lots of interesting perspectives for newbies anyway. So I think you're right. It's challenging to say what are the kind of 2 or 3 to get started, because it is just such a complex measurement. So last question for you. If you hadn't have been in this space, so focusing on employee experience or HR topics, what do you think you would be doing and why?
Oh, that's a good question. Like, it's so many interesting things I could do. I could be a scientist or other things. But full-time researcher, that will be the first thing I think if I didn't do this. But otherwise, I've been serving as a volunteer for like I think like 30, 40 years now. So I definitely like helping people. So I mean, it probably will be some volunteer organization helping homeless or also teenagers. It's growing up in this world is so hard, it's so difficult. Like my daughter, I'm glad she doesn't listen to the podcast. She's worried about the war, right? Is this the third world war and what's happening, right? So like mentoring young people and trying to create some values in them, and I would love to do that full time, actually. So I think, it will definitely be helping in some way, and probably in the volunteer organization. So yeah.
Wow. That's a very nice response. I was half expecting professional skier, like Olympian.
Yeah, that's from what you said earlier.
You were going to go for. But no, I love it. Well, thank you so much, for joining us on the podcast. I am so happy to be connected with you and so glad that we could get you on the podcast. I think the work you're doing is so important, and it's only going to grow in importance. I certainly know that in a previous episode we did on our predictions for this year, we said employee experience measurement is going to be at the forefront of everything we do this year. And so I just think your platform, and we will link it for everybody to access in the show notes and in the video description. So certainly go and check it out. And Roar, are you happy for people to reach out to you on LinkedIn if they want to connect and learn more?
For sure. And thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
You're so smart. You have so much knowledge in this area. So it's great to be on your show here.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you
it's great
so
to have
much.
you in the lounge. Awesome.
Yeah.
Take care. Thanks, Roar.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Okay. Take care.